Hi, my name is Paula Josa-Jones. I'm delighted to be doing this presentation for the Tellington celebration. My presentation is called Embodied Horsemanship, and I'd like to start by sharing a short video with you. So I will play that. This is about 4 minutes, and then I will be coming back to speak with you. Movement's everything. I mean, most of us think about our bodies as the thing that carries us from one place to another. So it's all about function. And we have very little awareness of the way that we handle everyday objects, or the way that we sit, or the way that we stand from a chair. We kind of think about ourselves as this, mind, and the body is often either forgotten or misunderstood or neglected. But the body is the vessel in which the mind lives. My name is Paula Josa-Jones. I'm a dance artist, a choreographer, a movement therapist. I work with horses and humans. My first concern is how can we find ways to make ourselves more available to our horses, more comprehensible to our horses, more trustworthy to our horses. I want to feel like your whole body is enough. What are you receiving from him? What are you giving? And what are you receiving? And how can that shift impact all of the different things that we want to do with our horses, whether we're just pleasure riders or Western riders or English riders? How can that change make that better? A lot of the horse world is very focused on, I own my horse and my horse works for me, and that's sort of the kind of the defining part of the relationship. I want us to think about this interspecies relationship from a different perspective. And my primary concern is that I want to make things better for the horses, because they are the ones who don't have a voice and often don't have a choice. I see my relationship as more co-equal in the sense that I spend as much time listening to them as asking them to listen to me. They're profoundly intuitive. They have a way of seeing and witnessing and sensing us that is unlike almost any other animal. Partly this has to do with the fact that they're prey animals. Movement and touch are, as my mentor and friend Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen says, they are the shadow of each other. One really can't exist without the other. What we're going to be looking at is how becoming more conscious of our movement, more confident in our ability to move easily, to move well, to be more playful in our movement, how that can transmit to our relationship with the horse. And then I say parenthetically, or our husband or wife or dog or child or friend or coworker, because it will affect those relationships. As we become more easeful, as we become more present, that has an effect on everything around us. The most exciting part of my horsemanship is really about the connection with them, the way in which they change us, the way in which they can soften parts of us that may have become shut down or unavailable, the way that they can awaken greater feeling and sensitivity and kindness in us. And that, to me, is really the greatest gift. So that is a film that's part of a longer piece that I'm hoping will be completed by the end of this year. So I'd like to begin by sharing this PowerPoint with you that I've been working on for a while. And so I will, again, share my screen with you and begin this presentation. So embodied horsemanship for me is about deepening our connection, deepening our feeling with our horses, and most clearly with ourselves. Our Horses Ourselves is the title of my book, which was published by Trafalgar. And my work is as an author and artist. I'm a dancer, movement educator, and I also work with folks who have experienced trauma as a somatic experiencing practitioner. And I, about 24 years ago, created an interspecies company with horses, dancers, and riders. And all of that work is very available on my website. And what I want to say is that the horses have taught me so much. How to feel my body, how to notice my emotions, how to become more aware and expressive and focused. They continue to teach me every minute that I'm with them. I feel that a day where I am not touching a horse is not complete, and that in their presence, I have this sense of their sending their understanding, their knowing, their sensing deep into my body. And they find they are what is true. And they teach me every day how to be still, how to steady my heart. This is just a page showing my book, which I hope all of you will pick up. It only took me 12 years to complete, and has many, many meditations and practices for deepening our presence and our connection with our horses. So many of my students have questions about, not about their riding, not about training in particular, but about the nature of their relationship with their horses. What do they want? What do I want from my relationship with my horse? And why do the same issues keep showing up from one horse or one instructor to another? And what perspectives might I include to expand my experience and my understanding with horses? And how can I connect more deeply with myself and with my horse? So embodied horsemanship is grounded in these principles of listening and co-embodiment, with the intention of creating a more collaborative and engaged relationship with the horse, rather than using any kind of force or dominance. It's also about finding ease and attunement with the horse and with ourselves as we become more aware of our own bodies, and we find more pleasure and confidence in our movement and our touch skills. I love this quote. Albert Einstein said that the highest form of research is play. So I'm always curious about how we can find more playful, more improvisational ways of being with our horses. A big part of this is coming into or shifting our awareness from one of dominance, where I'm the director, I'm the boss, to a place of exploring non-dominance, which is rooted more in kinship rather than power over, and improvisation more than control, responsiveness more than regulating or directing. This next page has a beautiful kind of chart which shows the difference between the usual hierarchical top-down perspective versus this newer bottom-up. This was developed by two somatic practitioners who are colleagues of mine. So on the left, you can see this top-down,
This is sort of a description of our Western way of seeing and being with each other, more hierarchical, more top-down, more delineated, clear boundaries. This is about regulation and control. Things are predictable, knowable, deterministic. This other perspective, which is this bottom up, or they call it also going under, is more community-centric, more relational, more connected with the environment, collaborative, networked, more emergent. I love this idea of messy, muddy boundaries and the sense of responsiveness and interdependence and improvisation in our relationships, more unpredictable. And it prioritizes process and questions rather than results. So I love this idea of co-embodying, which to me and to Satu and Sarah is about resonance. It's about co-regulation in our nervous system. It's about a kind of biological synchrony, syncing up in the deeper layers of our tissues, and this going underneath meaning making. And I love what my teacher, Black Belt Aikido master and cowboy Mark Rashid, talks about connecting the softness inside of us to the softness inside of the other. So what we're looking for when we're co-embodying is harmony and a shared settled state with the horse. So we're listening more than telling, and we're creating responsiveness and resonance instead of this tension and reactivity can often crop up when we're with our horses, and particularly if we're anxious or fearful or afraid for our own safety. This is another quote from my beloved teacher, Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. "The mind is like the wind and the body like the sand. If you want to know how the wind is blowing, you can look at the sand." This is a picture from a demonstration that we did at the Equine Affair several years ago with one of my dancers and the wonderful Liberty horse pony, also known as Escorial. So fundamental to this concept of co-embodiment and embodied horsemanship is the idea that we're not separate, that we're all part of what I like to call the common body. And what that means is that your body is not separate from my body or from the body of the horse, the praying mantis, the hummingbird, the manatee, the tree, the earth itself. We're not separate. We're different in some ways. We're similar in others, but we're not separate. And another quotation from a colleague of mine, Andrea Olson: "Understanding that body is a part of earth is an essential component of human awareness. Our bones and our breath and our blood are the minerals and the air and the water around us. So when you arrive someplace new, after a few days of drinking the water or eating the food from that place, you become that place." So this idea of separateness begins to fade, and this larger model of interconnectedness becomes more primary in our awareness. And this is from my book. When we transform our own bodies through movement or imagination, when we blend our own sensuous physiology with the earth or beings of a different species, we become more expressive, more feeling, an expressive landscape among other feeling expressive landscapes. Finding common ground. Ease is a key. So just now, check, are you comfortable? What tells you that you're comfortable? And is there anything that would make you feel even more comfortable in this moment? And again, from Bonnie, perfection is having the greatest range possible of comfort. And this beautiful short poem from Rumi, there's a way of breathing that's a shame and a suffocation. And there's another way of expiring, a love breath that lets you open infinitely. So breath. So just now, can you allow the breath to softly enter your body and then flow easily out? Just feeling this gentle filling and emptying rhythm of inhalation and exhalation. Can you feel your breath moving into every part of your body? Being aware of the air outside your body entering with each inhale, and the air from inside your body becoming part of the atmosphere around you as you exhale. This is like a continual commingling of inner and outer. Can you let the breath breathe itself without your needing to shape it or change it or improve it in any way? And now feel the sensation of your breath in your hands, in your feet, your ankles, your knees. Simply focus your awareness on the presence of breath in all parts of the body. If you move your awareness inside your body and to the feeling of the cells breathing themselves, rest. And now breathe into the whole envelope of your skin, from the soles of your feet to the crown of your head. In osteopathy, the crown of the head and the soles of the feet are considered to be two diaphragms. And just feel your body as a long, soft column of breath. And imagine your breath moving through the pores of your skin. What would it be like to do some of this as a preparation for your time being with your horse? Balance and grounding. So balance is a continual dynamic dance. It's not a fixed position. It's a dance between gravity and levity, between weightedness and lightness, between stability and mobility. It is a three-dimensional, continually changing relationship between the earth and our bodies. It's multisensory, it's cellular, it's a whole body experience of ourselves in relationship to the earth. It's how we find support and ease. So understanding that our balance is fluid rather than fixed helps us to become more at ease and more adaptable in our movement, less likely to brace or to make big destabilizing adjustments while we're on or with our horses. When we lock our joints or brace in our muscles in an effort to stabilize, that tension, that restriction affects the whole body, and that is transmitted to the horse. So there's a wonderful dancer named Steve Paxton, who was the originator of contact improvisation, and he talked about the little standing dance. So as you stand, and you could do this with your horse, or you could do it on your own, just notice the small swaying movements that happen as your body is balancing in relationship to gravity. So are you swaying more forward and back? Side to side? Maybe you detect a figure eight pattern in your sway. So your center is the place in your body that's poised between front and back, side to side, and up and down. And because we're moving beings, our center is moving when we move. So in this little standing dance, just be aware of any tension that you feel in your feet, your ankles, your buttocks, your jaw. Are you breathing? And as you allow this small swaying movement, can you feel how balance is not static, continually changing and adjusting? And feel the earth rising up to meet you as you soften down or yield into its support. These are a couple quotes about gravity that I just enjoy. So from David Abram, if you haven't read Being Animal, An Earthly Cosmology, please pick it up. It's a wonderful book. Although we've come lately to associate gravity with heaviness and to think of it as having strictly a downward vector, nonetheless, something rises up to us from the solid earth whenever we're in contact with it. We give ourselves precious little chance to taste this nourishment that springs up into us whenever we touch the ground. So it's hardly surprising that we've forgotten the erotic nature of gravity and the enlivening pleasure of earthly contact. And Bonnie says we receive gravity as well as giving into gravity. It's an exchange that lifts us away from the earth itself. There's a rebound in relationship. So what is orienting? Orienting is how we know where we are in space and time. It includes all of our senses: vision, hearing, our tactile, proprioceptive, and vestibular senses. So just now, just let your eyes move around wherever they want to go. Just taking in your surroundings. What's in front of you, what's behind, what's to the side, what's above, what's below. Can you feel how this very soft, meandering movement of your eyes orients you in the present moment? It expands your awareness of your surroundings and settles you into a more relaxed way of being. And notice how the movement of the eyes is felt in the rest of your body. Now close your eyes and feel into, discover your surroundings with your other senses. What are you hearing? What are you touching? Where are your body parts in relationship to each other? It's proprioception. Where's your balance? So with your horse, whether you're in the saddle or on the ground, you can use this orienting to notice where you are. Your awareness of your surroundings is actually reassuring to the horse. Because if you're aware, they don't have to be so vigilant. And can you feel your own sense of being oriented through all of your senses, not just your eyes, softens the connection between you and your horse? Can you imagine seeing and sensing from your whole body? So reciprocity. Reciprocity means that you allow yourself to be touched by what you're touching. It's feeling for connection in a multisensory way. So try this exercise with me. Just place your palms together like this. And first, just notice your dominant hand touching your non-dominant hand. And then notice your non-dominant hand touching your dominant hand. Just being aware of warmth, of pressure, of the texture of your skin. And now feel them touch, sensing each other. Feel the fullness of that exchange. And then slowly let them separate. And just feel the remains of that touch as you let your hands settle. So this is really the first way that I teach touching with the horse. Because in my experience, humans often feel like they're the toucher and they lose or overlook what is flowing into their bodies, not just their hands, but the whole of themselves from the horse. Softening. Often we defend against or we exclude what we don't want. We may harden. Instead of softening, we may be reactive rather than responsive. Often that arises from a sense of fear or anxiety or an absence of safety. So how can we soften into each other's presence? And how do we notice these really subtle signals of bracing or tightening or hardening in our bodies and minds? And how can we interrupt that and soften instead? Well, one way is through titration. This is a concept that really comes from the somatic experiencing world. It's also familiar to those of you who do clicker training, as we call it chunking down. But titration or chunking down, that means breaking our experience or our learning process into smaller and smaller steps. And as we do that, these separate or smaller elements become more comprehensible, more digestible to the horse and to us, more easeful, less overwhelming. And this picture is a picture of me working with Mustang stallion Nelson, who did not want anyone to touch him. And so the going was very slow and very thoughtful and feeling and listening to his responses, witnessing his responses, and then hearing and noticing and feeling and sensing when the yes was okay, the okay was there. So when we break down the steps to a task or a goal, we create an opportunity to build new connections and new understanding. And we make the parts of the task smaller and simpler and more digestible, easier to metabolize. And so we, with the horse, can learn something new or more challenging in a step-by-step way by just being in this moment, listening to each other, breathing this one breath together. But these are a couple suggestions from a wonderful book called How to Land, Finding Ground in an Unstable World, which is by one of my colleagues, Ann Cooper Albright. I like this idea of intentional being in the midst of doing. This is a way of unraveling our sense of busyness and hurry. Slowing down enough to feel space entering time. feeling our balance as continually recovering our uprightness, not holding. And then resilience as a combination of somatic perception and a sense of agency. So when we're with a horse, we are sharing a nervous system. When you're with your child or your partner, you're sharing a nervous system. And my sense is that our sense of connection has to begin with ourselves. If we don't feel a connection with ourselves, if we're unaware of how we're moving around in the world, what we're feeling, what we may be expressing through our bodies, through our minds, we can't genuinely connect with another person or another being. So just notice the tone of your nervous system right now. What do you feel? Are you calm? Is there a little agitation? A little anxious? You feel comfortable? And what do you notice in the responses of your horse to what you're feeling? And then look for connection with yourself, with your horse, by noticing the quieter, the more positive sensations in your bodily experience. That's a way of shifting your nervous system toward a place of greater quiet, sort of a parasympathetic quality, more settled, more able to connect. So this drawing on the left is of the vagus nerve, which I'm sure many of you have seen. And so I'll just read through this. This is about the autonomic nervous system. The traditional view is that it was a two-part system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So this kind of fight or flight or rest and digest. But the newer research and newer understanding of the autonomic nervous system is what's called a polyvagal theory, which identifies a third type of nervous system response, which is our social engagement system, which is this kind of hybrid state of activation and calming that plays a role in our ability to socially engage or not. So it takes its name from the vagus, this cranial nerve that forms the primary component of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it views the parasympathetic nervous system as being split into two branches, the ventral vagal, which supports this social engagement, and a dorsal vagal system, which supports immobilization, which is both rest and digest, taking a nap, and a defensive immobilization or shutdown. And this polyvagal theory was introduced by neuroscientist Stephen Porges. So perception and the senses. Our sensory perception is a beautiful blending of inner and outer. And the linear mind is the thing that creates a boundary between us and the world. This is from Stephen Buhner, this beautiful book called The Secret Teachings of Plants. Location of consciousness in the brain closes the door to nature, but the door is unlocked. The more sensitivity we cultivate to our sensory flows, going back to both our exteroceptive, vision, hearing, touch, and our more interoceptive awareness of what's inside the body, the more sensitivity we cultivate to these sensory flows, the more directly we can perceive with our senses, and the wider that door opens. And this is also connected to the heart. And this is from this same book by Stephen Buhner. The analysis of information flow into the human body shows that much of it impacts the heart first, flowing into the brain only after it has been perceived by the heart. What this means is that our experience of the world is routed first through our heart, which thinks about the experience and then sends some of the data to the brain for further processing. This is really a paradigm shift, isn't it? So when one shifts to heart-oriented cognition, mental dialogue, monkey mind, is reduced. So this shift in the focus of awareness from thinking to sensory perception and seeing from the heart, feeling from the heart, produces this transformational cascade that affects all of our physiological and cognitive functioning. Welcome, Linda. I remember taking a workshop with Linda and watching her watch a horse that the owner had brought to a clinic with a list of problems, a list of things that she was struggling with. And I remember Linda looking at this horse and saying, "Isn't that interesting?" And I felt like, whoa, wait, what? And what she was doing for me and for everyone there, and I will never forget it, and I will never stop thanking her for this, was that she was opening the door to curiosity and opportunity or possibility rather than focusing on the problem. So curiosity. Can you become more curious about your own movement? Can you use some of these movement practices to discover parts of the body, your body, that you may not usually notice or feel? And are you open to being more playful, more improvisational in your body, in your mind? And what if you let your movement responses become more intuitive, more spontaneous, arising from the body itself rather than direction from the mind? And this is a quote from a teacher in the somatic experiencing world. Even though this is happening, whatever it is there a way for it not to be a problem? And so this brings us to the idea of habits. And really what we know is that any habit, any automatic pattern of being or doing or moving, shuts down the here and now. And these habitual patterns can show up as tension or pain in certain body parts, ways of reacting that feel automatic or reflexive. For example, an impatient reaction with your horse or an outburst at work or at home. And so when we notice our habits, we have the opportunity to unravel some of the tension, some of the brace, some of the freeze that can come with these patterns, some of the deadness that comes with them. So how do we notice patterns? So notice what happens when you pick up the lead rope. Notice the automaticity, or notice the tone of your response. Is it fear? Do you feel a sense of dominance? I'm taking my horse somewhere. Are you frustrated? Is there a braciness as you pick up the rope? Or is there this sense of curiosity? What's here today in me, in the horse? Is there a quality of softness, kindness? Do you default to habitual ways of moving and being with your when you're with the horse, when you're with another person. And then how do you notice these automatic responses? The clue is your body. It will tell you. And then what are some other choices? What if you let go of any sense of urgency or hurry? What if you let the horse come to you? What if you use intentional pauses to interrupt your usual rhythms? What if you wait to feel your body and mind settle before you connect with the horse? What if you orient to pleasure and play rather than pursuing a goal? And this is from Bonnie again. The primary sense organs of touch and movement are located throughout the body, in every cell. Touch is emphasized in the skin. Movement is emphasized in the proprioceptive and kinesthetic receptors in the joints, ligaments, muscles, and tendons, the interoceptors of the organs, and the vestibular mechanism of the inner ear. Movement and touch develop simultaneously. Touch is the other side of movement. Movement is the other side of touch. They are the shadow of each other. I want to say that all of these photographs are from my work over the years with horses. With many of these are images of my dancers with one of our favorite horses, Escorial. So these are all from, most of them from my work. So how do we speak in movement? 70% of our communications are nonverbal. They are spoken in the bodily languages of movement and touch. We are speaking in movement all the time with our conscious and unconscious gestures, our posture, our facial expressions, but we're often unaware of what we're actually expressing, how we're moving, or what the tone is in the background of our movement. So why is that important? Because the horses are continually reading our behavior and our intentions through the expression of our bodies and our emotions. As prey animals, reading their environment is the key to their survival. So to connect with our horses, we have to become more aware of what we are feeling and expressing with our bodies, with our movement, with our touch, this primary language that we share with horses. So touching. I love this. The epidermis of the skin is ecologically like a pond surface or a forest soil, not a shell so much as a delicate interpenetration, because the beauty and complexity of nature are continuous with ourselves. Touch is a sensory language that we speak not just with our hands, but with our whole body. It's how we connect, it's how we explore, it's how we soothe. It brings us into this immediate, visceral, sensual relationship with the world around us. It's how we draw close, it's how we decode, it's how we savor. It dissolves our separateness, and it's the most intimate and feeling way that we bridge the space between two beings. How we touch, the quality of intention, the quality of receptivity, this reciprocity that I talked about earlier, and this listening, somatic listening, bodily listening that we bring to this defines our attention and our caring for each other. It is always a shared act. It's reciprocal. We are being touched by what we're touching. Our tactile communication flows in two directions. outward toward the other and inward toward us. So one of the first things that I teach when I'm working with touch is this quality of yielding or softening. It's the first way that we experience support as infants, yielding. It's the foundation of our sense of connection with the earth and our caregivers. If you think about the way that a baby's body feels as it softens into you, that's the quality of yielding. It's when we soften and open our tissues, skin, muscle, bone, fascia, fluids, everything, into the grounding, into the support of what is there in the moment. So when we learn to use this yielding touch, this softening and expanding into, that gives the horse and the human, this shared feeling of deep connection and support. So I will often just teach this as just resting and yielding the hands into contact without any sense of doing or repairing or figuring things out or interpreting. It's simply a softening and yielding into. You can practice this on your own body. It's not collapsing or pushing. It's a way to find support and connection, but simply allowing the hands and the body to settle into contact with your chair right now, with the floor, with the earth, with another being. It's about listening through the hands and the whole body. So what you're looking for is a sense of coherence, which means that the cells of your body and the horse's body are kind of vibrating or humming with the same resonance or frequency. And the yielding touch is really a way of discovering that. So let go of any plan. Just see what you feel when you open to listening with your hands. Let yourself wait for your hands to be drawn to or moved to a place on the horse's body. Don't try to figure it out with your mind. Let your body find it. And then just settle your hands there with this yielding touch. And then feel that reciprocity, that two-directional flow to and from you and the horse. Can you listen from your cells? Can you listen from your organs? Can you listen from the whole envelope of your skin? Muscles, bones, fluids. And using that soft, expansive attention, just notice any responses from the horse or any shifts that you might feel in your own body. Let's talk about deep listening. This was a somatic listening practice that was developed by composer Pauline Oliveros as a foundation for her work. Was not about horses, but her work was about listening in music. I have translated this as really foundational for an engaged relationship with the horse. So what is deep listening? In 1989, Pauline coined this term deep listening to describe a practice of radical attentiveness. She believed that listening was an inherently empathetic act and that it requires receptivity to the intentions of others and to the natural world. And in my experience, I worked with Pauline starting in 1990, worked with her. She was a composer for my work as a choreographer. And what I learned is that deep listening really invites us to respond from the ease and the fluidity of the body, rather than from the slow heaviness of thought. Again, coming back to that sense of what Stephen Buhner talked about with letting things come in through the heart. This feels connected to that. So how do we listen with horses? This is, again, speaking in the shared language of movement. So stand with your horse. Not too close, not too far. And notice all of the movement. Ears, eyes, head, tail, skin, hooves, breath. The whole body. And then feel all the layers and the parts of your whole body. Skin, muscle, bone, breath, fluids, organs. And notice the alternating rhythms of movement and stillness in both you and the horse. What rhythms are always present? Breath, heartbeat, movement of the organs, the cells, the fluids, the mind. This is the beginning of attunement and of listening. So how do we practice deep listening with a horse? This is carrying us into the deeper waters of dancing with horses, which I'm about to get to. So when you hear a sound or sense a movement, you can respond in one of these ways. You could respond instantaneously. You could join it. You could delay your response by any amount, or you could anticipate or precede. So when your horse moves, you respond in movement. You can respond instantaneously. You could delay your response. Or you could anticipate or precede your horse's movement. Now think about this in a practical sense. We're always responding in movement, but if you make this practice more intentional, and if you give yourself kind of the structure of these three ways of responding instantaneously, delaying, anticipating, well, 4, joining, what changes? You start to wake up a little bit more in your own body. And then notice as you're doing this, how movement and stillness are sort of the underlying ground for this listening practice. And be just as curious about the stillness as you are in the movement. So notice. Are you responding instantaneously? Are you joining your horse's movement? Are you delaying your response? Are you anticipating? Which feels more natural? Which is more familiar to you? And then how is your horse responding to this or noticing? I have to say that the first time I tried this with my very feisty, really feral Mustang mare, Izara, I started to practice this way with her, just this very intentional, responsive practice with my movement in response to hers. And I could feel her kind of go, wait now, what? You also speak in movement. And I felt this alignment with her, as if we both had come into this same world of movement and sensation, and were conversing in this much more intricate and kind of nuanced way through movement, using these strategies. What if you respond just with your eyes? What if you respond with your tailbone, your breath, your fingers, your elbows, your skin? What if you respond with your kidneys, your toes, your voice? So this is expanding the palette of your own movement and your own awareness of your movement menu, if you will. So you can play with variations. Your movement could be slow or fast. It could be big or small. It could be tense or relaxed. It could be meandering or straight. You could be near your horse or farther away. I've practiced this across the field and seen horses go, wait, she's talking. You could respond with your whole body or just parts of the body. How is your horse responding? How do you feel? What's changing? So try this. Your horse moves quickly, you respond slowly. Your horse makes a small, quick movement, and your movement and response is small and quick, but with a different part of your body. You contrast the speed, the size, or the body part of the movement with the movement of your horses. You mirror the size, speed, and body part of your horse's movement. You move the same body part, but with a delay and a different movement quality. The possibilities here, and this is dancing with horses, the possibilities are infinite. Here we go. Function and expression, such an important part of this. We are so often just concerned with the mechanics of our movement. We focus on strength, on flexibility, but we lose a sense, we lose sight of the expressive poetic qualities of our movement. And the absence of expressivity can show up as this kind of braced, unbalanced, constricted, or more rigid relationship with our bodies. Riding can be primordial, it can be ecstatic, not just an exercise in correctness or getting to the next level. Like dance, in my experience, riding can transport us, can carry us out of our solemn, staid, habit-bound bodies and bring us into this more rambunctious, unpredictable terrain of the flesh. So embodied horsemanship isn't about making the horse do something you want it to, or suppressing her exuberance or curiosity. It's about learning to ride or be on the ground with a body that can be both wild and still, with this quiet, receptive mind and a kind heart. And this allows the horse to find her own poetic power and expression. So dancing releases dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins that combine and influence one another to create this cycle of happy hormones and positive emotions in the brain. Rhythm facilitates people and animals interacting by synchronizing brainwaves and boosting perception of what the other being is communicating and doing. All of us should be dancing more. Rhythm, and I love this quote from a psychologist, rhythm facilitates our interpersonal interactions in terms not only of how we move, but how we talk and think. It facilitates people, and I would say other species, interacting by synchronizing brain waves and boosting performance of perception of what the other is saying and doing. When we move in synchrony, we're more likely to perceive the world in synchrony. And so that facilitates our ability to interact. And I would say that the practices of deep listening that I just described are rhythmic and are another way of creating rhythms. Rhythm is not necessarily just metric. It can be varied. Anna Halprin, the great dancer and choreographer, said there are two ways of working with the body. One is when the mind informs the body. That's that top-down thing that we talked about earlier. Mind is telling you what to do. That's one way. The other, the bottom-up way, is when the body itself informs the mind. Your body impulses guide you. That sense of waiting for your hand to be drawn somewhere on the horse, waiting for an impulse to shift to another place that is not guided by thought, but by the body itself. Then you are able to have experiences that go beyond words, that go beyond your conscious thinking, but are a part of you. That's the thrill of working with movement. The dancing relationship that I am interested in, that I am curious about, is not about steps or planned or memorized movement. That's old. We've done that. It's about allowing impulses for movement or stillness to arise from the body, from conscious listening, from a moving conversation with your horse. How is waiting to be moved different from moving with intention? And how can you recognize an impulse from the body rather than a directive from the mind? Practice. Here is a recipe for dancing with a horse. Movement and stillness. How do they alternate? Waiting to be moved, waiting for impulse from the body. A sense of either joining with or separating from. Walk, run, stand. You can be close to the horse, you can be far away. You can be standing, you could be kneeling or coming down to a lower level. Mirroring the horse's movement, contrasting the horse's movement. Quick versus sustained. Strong versus light. And of course, using all of the listening strategies as a part of this. What changes? As you start to explore this way of conversing with your horse in the language of movement, what changes do you notice in yourself, in your horse? What's the quality of bodily communication and feeling between you? How are you sharing each other's rhythms? Can you let go of any sense of doing and just let this become a way of being? And how can this movement conversation help you to be together without demands, without expectations, without an agenda, just in the moment? How does the horse show you that he or she is listening? Saying yes, saying no. Remember that the purpose of these movement practices, the purpose of improvising with your horse, using somatic listening, is to awaken engagement and aliveness in you. In you. Your enthusiasm, your awareness, your awakeness will transmit to the horse, allowing you to join each other with softness and curiosity. It isn't about just getting it right, but opening to possibility, to play, and to orienting to pleasure. And these are my special thanks. Many of them have been here quoted in this presentation. And special thanks to my beautiful dancers, Deanna and Ingrid, and the wonderful Escorial, also known as Pony. If you want information about any of my work, any of my classes, workshops, individual sessions, clinics, you can contact me this way. I'm happy to explore any and all possibilities with you. And thank you so much for being here and being a part of this presentation. I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to having the opportunity to speak with you, to dance with you, to move with a horse with you. So once again, thank you. And thank you again to the Tellington people for this wonderful opportunity and this celebration. Thank you.